Hello, my name is Danielle Hairston Green. I'm the president and founder of Embracing Arms Incorporated. And I'm so honored to have you guys here with me today. We have probably the largest number of registrants in this session today. And I guess it's perfectly aligned with the season because this is around the time that a lot of our students are getting their acceptance letters from college. If you are a senior, usually between December and March or April, you start getting a lot of letters of acceptance and deadlines to, confirm if this is the school that you're going to be going to. If you are a junior, this is around the time you start really doing some studying and doing college tours to try to figure out what you want to do. So perfect timing, and I'm so honored that you registered for today's session. If there are topics that we've been sharing with you throughout this spring that wasn't aligned with things that you wanted to know, and you want us to tap into other topics, please drop it in the chat box, or you can email me at embracingarms.com. Danielle at embracingarms.com, or visit our website at www.embracingarms.com. Click on our workshop tab, check it out. Or you can actually log in to become an Embracing Arms community member, where you can get exclusive access to other resources. So without further ado, we're going to go through this session. We're going to spend about 45 minutes talking about the topic, and then we will deep dive and have some open discussions with you. For those who are watching this as a recording, you will not have the pleasure of listening to the open discussion. So I encourage you to register for our live sessions in the future. So, all right, so we're going to get started. I'm going to share my screen so that you can follow along with me with the PowerPoint that I've created for you. All right, and also if you get an opportunity, go visit our YouTube page at Your Best Life, URBESTLYFE, where you can check out some 5-minute quickies and messages throughout the year about just random topics that has an impact on your life. And so again, any topics that you're interested in hearing more of, please let us know. So we're going to start off with just asking you guys to think about some things that I know many students haven't considered as they're preparing for going out in the real world. And so some of the things that I'm always asking our mentees to think about are finances, the academic experience period, aligning your life goals, and also, are you ready for some of the stress and the independence, the semi-independence that you will experience in being in college. So in terms of finances, I'm asking my young people to just start jotting down some notes, about scholarships that may be available. Have you contacted the schools to find out if there are academic scholarships within the department that you're interested in, or perhaps there are some academic scholarship that's available throughout the university? Many of our students don't do that, and they don't even know where to begin. There are some scholarships and some fellowships that our young people can tap into throughout their communities. There could be, there are organizations that have scholarship fundraisers throughout the year, offering it exclusively to students that are attending high schools that are in the city where the organization headquarters are. You have organizations like the NAACP, some of the Divine Nine organizations that do scholarship fundraisers throughout the year that you can apply for, that you could be eligible for. So have we done our homework to find out if we can financially afford this experience? Because you have to feel confident that your college education can be paid for in order for you to be ready. If you don't feel confident that your college education can be paid for, you might struggle a little bit in, preparing yourself for this experience, because there's nothing worse than not knowing where the money is going to come from. And so I encourage our young people to start early looking for those funds. Look at the Tom Joyner Foundation, look at the Obama Foundation, look at the local fellowships and foundations that you can tap into. Maybe your parents are alumni of other institutions that may have some financial support for you, or maybe you are trying to attend a school that your parents once attended. There may be some financial support for you as a legacy. So just do your homework, just Google that. That's the beautiful thing about this age, that you can Google a lot of information. When I was in college, or when I was beginning to prepare for college, I had to go to the library and sit for hours and look through huge binders of scholarship opportunities that in some cases have already passed this deadline, or it would take me hours to go through it just to find out that I was eligible for one or two. And so I just encourage you guys to use the technology that we have to help you connect with the information that you need in terms of your finances. The other thing is academics. What does your current academics look like? What does your GPA look like? Are you ready for, the focus that you have to have in order for you to successfully get through the academic portion of that experience? I mean, it is an experience, and it's primarily an academic experience. And so if you can't make it through the academic part of your college experience, you're not going to make it through at all, right? Some people decide they want to go to college because they just want to be with their friends. They want to be a part of student organizations. They, want to play sports or whatever that thing is. But if your academics isn't solid now, your chances of getting into a school is very slim. And once you get into the school, holding on, is very, very difficult if you do not strengthen your academics now. So how does your high school GPA and test scores compare to the typical accepted student at the schools you're considering? They always have information of every college that outlines the average GPA of students that have been accepted into the school. Does your GPA line up with that? And if not, if you're a junior, this might be a good time to start working on that. I'm always encouraging young people from the 8th grade, to think about preparing for high school, because those grades will follow you. And if you fail courses in your freshman year, it takes a while to kind of catch up. So that your cumulative average will be something that's eligible for you to get into the school of your choice, right? They're not just looking at your last year GPA. They're looking, and in most cases, if you're applying for school, right? If you're applying for school, you're applying for it at the end of your junior year or at the beginning of your senior year. And the only courses, the only credits that they can see is your freshman, sophomore, and junior. That's it. That's all they have, because you're sending their transcripts. You haven't even finished your senior year. So even if you have a banged out senior year 4.0, they're not going to be able to see that. They're seeing their freshman, sophomore, and junior years. And so if you started off your freshman year and you struggled, it's going to impact your cumulative GPA between then and the time that you apply for school. So you got to go into first day on campus as a freshman in high school, go in hard, so that your cumulative GPA is not impacted. So look at the school that you're interested in and determine if the GPA that they're asking for is something that is aligned with what you're able to do. And then the other thing is, think about what you want to do in your life. Where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself living? Where do you see yourself in terms of your career? Because a lot of young people don't think about that, where they're going to live when they're choosing a college, right? They may have heard some great things about Arizona State University, but they're coming from a winter state and they didn't realize how hot Arizona was, or maybe they heard some amazing things about, Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, and they're coming from a hot state and they didn't realize how cold it is. So, really looking at that, the location that you're going to, and then also looking at your life goals. Where do you see yourself? What do you see yourself doing? What drives you? What gets you excited? Drilling down on that. So take some time to think about what you want to do as a career and what level of education fits your needs best, right? Because in some cases, you may only need to go to technical school. You may not need to go to college, right? College is not for everyone. And so depending on the career that you're interested in, you may be okay just going to technical school. And there are some amazing technical schools all over the country that you can attend that will give you a wonderful academic experience, and some amazing community colleges throughout the United States that in some cases have a stronger rigor than some of the four-year institutions. So think about what you want to do in your life goals before you make the final decision regarding higher education and your next steps. And then the other thing is the stress, right? And the independence that you're going to find yourself in. There will be some stress on campus, especially if you have not tapped into some of the skills that you need in order for you to be successful early on when you're attending schools. And we'll talk about a little bit about those skills as we're advancing these slides. But there will be, some level of stress, and it's not to say that you're going to be in this stress mode every day for the entire 4 years of your college experience, but you will find yourself in stressful situations, test taking, managing your time, balancing academics with, your social activities and relationships. Are you prepared for some of that? And are you prepared to be in this semi-independent situation where you're no longer under your parents' care, right? Your parents have access to you and in terms of phone calls and possibly being able to get in a car and go check you out. But depending on where you live and what school you go to, they may not be able to have access to you as easy as they would if you're living at home. And so if you're running out of food in your refrigerator, right, your parents may not have access to go to the grocery store and get you your food. Maybe they'll be able to Grubhub you something or send you a gift card virtually so that you can get your groceries. But it's a little different than being at home and knowing that those things are always available and ready. So are you ready? Are you prepared for how you're going to deal with the stress and how you're going to deal with the independence? And does the word college excite you? Or does it fill you with dread? Because that's something else that you might want to consider. Because if you're really dreading this idea of going away to college, maybe this is an opportunity to take a gap year, to kind of build your maturity a little bit, or perhaps consider going to a community college where you can kind of get your feet wet a little bit and still be close to home. So those are some things that, you should consider as you're preparing for your next step called college. Okay, so throughout this presentation today, we're going to be talking about these 5 areas: time management, communication, conflict management, critical thinking, and people you should know. Now, each one of these topics deserve its own hour because they're very, very important soft skills or life skills that I think will help you stay afloat while you are in college. And so we're going to touch on it really, really quickly. Again, keep dropping. I can see there's, already comments in the chat. So keep dropping messages in your chat and I'll definitely get to those messages as we are moving forward. Yes, and we're going to talk about time management. Thank you for that. We're going to start off with time management. Yes, I see some parents like, yeah, and that's a big issue. It is a big issue. So time management, we're going to start off with. So let's get to it. Let's talk about time management. So, some of the things that I'm always encouraging my mentees to do as they are trying to figure out their time management, because some of your young people go into college without that skill. Or maybe you try to brushing up on those skills and it just didn't work out. And so now you're out here on your own trying to figure it out. So this is some of the things that I want to say about time management. I want you to start getting into the practice of recording all your dates and deadlines, all your dates, deadlines, and times. Anything that you have to do in order to make sure that you are prepared. Anything, any dates, critical dates, even social things. One of the things that I find some of my students forget to do is actually schedule time in your calendar for when you're going to spend with your friends. If you have a dinner date planned with your friends or some social activity, or you're going to a concert, whatever that thing is, that needs to go in your calendar too, because that helps you manage your time properly. If you know you have an exam on Monday, but there's a huge concert that you're going to out of town on Saturday, which is going to prevent you from being able to study on Saturday and possibly study on Sunday, then you might want to carve out some time on Thursday and Friday to get as much studying in, and then get up super early on Monday to do some recap, right? But if you don't have that concert or that activity saved in your calendar, you may not be able to manage your time properly, so that you can prepare for it. So record all dates and times. Your professor, your teachers is going to give you a syllabus. And typically, if they have a solid syllabus, it's going to give you all the dates, everything that you need to know, all the projections, all of the exam dates, all the midterms, all of that is going to be in your syllabus. You need to record that in your calendar, everything. The other thing is set a routine. It just helps you stay consistent, whatever that routine is, getting up in the morning, going to the gym and working out, having, having a good breakfast, making sure you check your emails first thing in the morning, because sometimes your professors might send you an email just an hour before class starts to say, hey, there's this other thing that I need you guys to come to class with, or hey, we're canceling class today. So you have the gift of time to do some studying. So set a routine, and whatever that is, you want to stick to it. If your routine is every Tuesday and Thursday, you go out and you have dinner with your girls and with your guy friends, that's fine. Set a routine and be consistent with it. Take your note taking to the next level. Many of us struggle with note taking. I know I certainly did. And it took me a long time to learn how to take notes. I mean, I did everything from recording the lecture and then going back to my home to type up what I heard in the lecture and then create notes from those type, transcriptions and highlighting things. And that just took extra time. So not only am I sitting in a class for an hour, but I'm going home and I'm listening to the notes for an hour. And it takes me about another 4 hours to really transcribe all of those notes. It was just taking way too much time. So that didn't work for me. And some professors won't allow you to record their classes. So that's going to be another obstacle. So this is an opportunity for you to learn how to take some good notes, take it to the next level, right? Write your notes from your class, or write your notes in the margins of your paper from the book that you've read. If your professor is going to be going over chapter 3 on Monday, you make sure that you read through chapter 3 and you're writing questions in the margins of that book that you want to discuss in the class for clarity. Right? And there's no bad questions. There's no dumb questions. The only bad question is the one that you never got a chance to ask, right? So in the margins of your book, write down the questions that you have. Highlight the things in your book that you just was confused about, or you just want more conversation. And then when you come to the class, you follow along the syllabus or the agenda, whatever the professor have for you, and you make sure that you ask those questions and you write those notes. So whatever you're doing right now, take your notes to the next level. Keep yourself healthy. I mentioned a routine, getting up and having a good breakfast, getting good sleep, working out if you need to, even if your body looks slim and you don't think you need to work out, you need to get your blood circulating. You need to make sure that you're walking, you're stretching your body, and making sure that you keep your body healthy. Have some meditation time where you can calm your mind before you go to sleep at night so that you can get a good night rest. Cut your cell phones off, shut your laptops off at least an hour before you go to bed so that you can calm your mind and relax and get a good night's rest. If you have vitamins, make sure you get your vitamins in. If you have prescribed medication, make sure that you don't run out of those medications, because that's important. So keep yourself healthy. Ask for help. Ask for help. You would be surprised. A lot of young people just won't ask. And if you just would have the conversation with your professor and keep them informed of what's going on in any of your challenges and your struggles, they will be way more lenient with you towards the end when you're really, really at your last leg and you just need that extra boost, right? It's one thing to keep them informed and let them know what your challenges are while it's happening, than to just check out and then wait until the end of the semester and you want a lifeline, right? So have the conversation, build a relationship with your professor, let them know when you're struggling. Look at your students on the left and the right of you. If they look like they're getting it, ask them if they can give you 10 minutes of their time after class to help you understand a concept, right? Ask for help, call your parents. If you're not a first generation student, that means your parents may have been in school before. Maybe they could give you some guidance, and support, or call an old high school teacher that's always been there for you so that they can give you some additional guidance, but ask for help. Stay organized. Please stay organized. Don't just toss things all over the place and then you can't find them later. You must keep your items organized. When I was a young people, we had these things called trapper keepers. And it was like this vinyl kind of folder binder that had folders within the folders and pockets and zipper bags for your pen. I mean, it was crazy. It was like the thing. If you didn't have a trapper keeper, you wasn't it. And so I don't know what the it thing is, to have now, but keeping, a book bag that's cleared out of junk, have your notebooks for each one of your class. And I would suggest that you have a different notebook for each class, because it's really hard to keep one notebook for one class. And now you're flipping through trying to find the notes for that particular class. So have a notebook for each one of your classes, keep it organized, keep your books in a space where you can access it easier. If you have a desk in your room, make sure your desk is cleared of clutter so that you can keep your items organized. If you are a digital person and you don't like a lot of papers, that's fine. Keep your desktop organized. Don't have things just saved all over your desktop. Find a folder, create a folder for it, and put those items in an appropriate folder so that when you go to retrieve it later, you know exactly where it is. And checklists are your friend, right? So if you're going into your day, again, having a routine, getting up, checking your emails, checking your calendar, what is on my agenda today, you can start writing a checklist of everything that you have to do in order for you to have a successful day. Whatever that thing is, if it's taking a walk, write a checklist about it. If it's a homework assignment, put it on your checklist. If it is reminding yourself to call your team that your teacher had assigned you to for an activity, contact your team, text your team, whatever that is, create a checklist. That also helps you to stay organized and, support you successfully getting through your day. Yes, asking for help. There's no limits to asking for help. It could be your classmate. Thanks for that question. It could be your classmate. It could be your professor. It could be the, associate dean in your department. It could be the secretary in your department. And we'll talk a little bit about, building relationships later on in the slides, but don't limit yourself to who you can ask help from. There are learning labs on campus as well. Go and take advantage of that. And even before, so if these are some things that you need to be working on in your senior year or your junior year, there are learning labs on your campus at high school. Some of your professors, your high school teachers may take the time and stay after school for a few minutes to help guide you through something. Wherever you at, or either your junior year or your senior year in high school preparing for college, or you're already in college, there are people surrounding you that if you just ask for the help, they would lend the help. So thanks for that question. So let's get into the communication portion of our presentation. So, for me, communication kind of has like these 4 components, right? In order for you to know if it's effective or not. How well do you assess your space and the conversation that's happening around you? How well do you build your message, like your response, the way you communicate back to what you're hearing and seeing? How well do you document information? Right? Sometimes it's hard to communicate back your needs or concerns if you're not tracking what those things are. And then how well do you actually deliver the message that you have, right? So when you're thinking about communication, it's all of those components. And so one of the things that I always tell my students is that if you're talking, you're not listening. And if you're not listening, then you're not able to really hear and assess what's going on in your space. And so I'm always really trying to get my mentees to really listen to what's going on, listen to the conversation that's being had, and not listen in a way, or not engage in a way that you're not listening because you're trying to formulate your next response. You're not really listening in that case. Some people they're only quiet because they're processing what they're about to say next, and they don't hear anything that you have to say. Or sometimes when people are communicating, you're anticipating what the person that's communicating with you is saying. Like you're already in this high anticipation mode of what you think they may say. And so you're already responding. And oftentimes you're responding wrong. Like, no, that's not what I was trying to say. Like, can you give me a moment so I can say what I'm trying to say? So having good communication skills is going to be really critical for you. It's critical now. It's going to be critical for you when you go to college, and it's going to be critical for, you or your college student when they go out into the real world. So these are some things that I'm always really trying to get my mentees to think about is listening. Like really practice good listening skills and being patient, and hearing what's being said, so that you can better articulate your needs. Successful listening is not just about understanding what people are saying or what people are writing, right? It's also understanding how that person is feeling in that space. What are they feeling? How are they communicating their feelings? And so just understanding how to hear someone and articulate what they're saying back to them, but clearly understanding their feelings, right? That's important for communication. And then straight talking, like often it's hard for you to express how you feel about things because you're not communicating, because you're keeping it quiet. Like that's my business. I'm not sharing my business with anyone. Okay, well, okay, that's cool too. But if you really want people to understand where you're coming from and how you're feeling about a certain thing, you have to be willing to just have conversations, random conversations, not so random conversations, but just being open to communicating. Even friendly conversations, like conversations with your classmates, friendly conversations with your professor. Those just random friendly conversations can help build some trust. And in those conversations, you may be able to detect some problems that may end up becoming serious, and they may be able to detect some problems coming from you that could potentially become serious. And then the other thing is nonverbal communication. Like a lot of people don't pay attention to what they're not saying, like their body language, their posture, their eyes. Like I have friends that communicate a whole lot just in their face, right? And we have to be very aware of that in our communication, right? And so if you want people to see you as an approachable person, you have to then start thinking about like your posture and the energy that you're putting out that's not verbal, because you say, well, that's not what I said. Well, that's the way you were looking. You know what I mean? Oh, she's not interested in any of this. I didn't say I wasn't interested. Well, you sure the way you got your arms folded and your face twisted up, you seem not interested, right? So you have to also be cognizant of your body language, because the way you look, listen, create, react, gestures, those things speaks far more about your feelings than the words that, will ever be able to. And then the other thing is that control your emotions. Sometimes, you want to be heard, you're having a rough time at something, and, we just get super emotional, and that shuts people off sometimes, because sometimes people don't know how to handle all of that emotion, right? I'm the type of person that, oh, you know what? Let me get back to you when that energy is toned down a little bit, because you're doing too much right now. And that's not how I communicate. And this is not making me comfortable. So I need to step away. So controlling your emotion getting that in check before you engage in conversations will help to have an effective communication with you and whomever you're trying to communicate with. So if you're not aware of your feelings, that you're guided, by, you won't be able to properly express your needs or what you are currently experiencing. And then as a result, you'll be frustrated, right? You'll be in some major conflicts with yourself and with others, and you just always feel like you're being misunderstood. So be really conscious of that. Listening skills, just having open, random conversations with people. Nonverbal communication is really critical, and then having some control over your emotion. All right. And so we're talking about conflict management, right? That's another thing that you have to deal with when you're going off to college. And even right now, and I'm sure that at some point while you're in high school, you have dealt with conflict, and parents who are logged in. I know that we have several parents logged in. I know that you experience conflict with maybe your high school student at the home, right? And so we're talking about managing conflict. How do you manage conflict properly? So this little chart that I have in here looks at like 5 different approaches to managing conflict, right? It's either competing, collaborating, compromise, avoiding, or accommodating. And depending on where you're at in this continuum will determine exactly how your conflicts are typically resolved. And depending on the person, right? So if the issue that you're dealing with has like a high level of importance and the relationship to that thing or that person is high, right? You have high level importance and the relationship with that person is really, really strong. Chances are the way you manage your conflict is going to be collaborative because you want everybody to win. You want to win, that person's going to win, right? If the issue is low importance and the person that you're in conflict with is in low importance, then chances are the way the conflict is going to be managed is a whole lot of avoidance, where one or both parties just want to suppress because it doesn't matter. No issue here. Right. And so what we desire, what we want to happen in conflict is both party wins. That's the desire. That's the goal. Both party gets something. And so the way that you get to achieving that goal is through a few things, right? Actively listening. We talked about that in our communication slide. Actively listening to what's happening in this conflict, right? Actively listening to what's going on around you that's causing the conflict. Listen to what the other person has to say and doing it without interrupting. And again, we talked about that in our communication and how sometimes we're already projecting what we think this person is going to say, and we're formulating our response in our head. And so we're not able to hear. Communication, that goes back to our slide also, how important it is in expressing how you feel about stuff in order for you to manage that conflict. So focusing on the problem that's happening at that moment and not what the other person did will help you to avoid unnecessary conflict, because sometimes we get so caught up in the action, right? Without really drilling down on why did that happen in the first place? What problem arose that made this thing happen, right? If we drill down on that, that helps to resolve future conflicts. Otherwise, we don't really deal with the issue, that conflict is going to keep coming up. And then talking about some options, like where are the options here? I'm looking for some solutions that actually benefit everyone, right? The whole collaboration, like I want to win, you want to win. I don't want to feel left out. I don't want to feel like I had to give up something. You don't want to feel like you have to give up something. So what are those options? You don't want to feel pressured to come up with an answer immediately, right? So you want some time as well. You want to be able to think through like what's going on, because we still want to collaborate. We still want this thing to work out. This is some things that you might want to consider when you're going to college, when you're having to deal in team environments. As a professor for the graduate school, I put my students in a lot of teams. And I will tell you right now, students hate teams. They hate it. They hate it, especially high performing students, because they feel like they're always carrying the weight. They hate it. And so conflict always happens. And so these are some things that you might want to consider. And then, as I said, you always want to end with a win-win solution, right? Nobody wanted to, you don't want to avoid it, and you don't want to lose yourself in the process, but you want to win. Like, you want that person to get what they need, that situation to get taken care of, as well as you get what you need. So that's the ultimate goal, to have a win-win solution. Agreeing on an option that benefits both sides to some extent is really, really critical here. All righty, so let us go to our next slide. Let me check the chat really quick, because I know that we have some questions. Yes, let me move back to the previous slide really quick, because that's a good question. Yeah, so if it's important for you to achieve the goal, but you really don't care about the relationship, right? So you're having a conflict between you and your classmate, don't really like them, but you got to get this thing done. You got to get it done. What will happen is you'll just go ahead and get it done so that you can say, I did it, right? That's that whole competing thing. I don't even want to deal with this person. I don't care what they want, whatever. This thing is due on Monday, I'm going to get it done without them, and I'm going to turn it in and let my professor know that I did it. That's competing. So one party seeks to satisfy interest regardless of the impact of the other party, right? And so we don't want that. I mean, it's healthy. Competition is healthy, but does it really get to the issue? Because what if there's a second assignment that you have to do with this same person? You never even resolved the issue that caused you to have the conflict in the first place, because you felt like they were of low importance. And now we're revisiting this. And now you're more frustrated because you're about to pick up the weight again for the second project. So while, yes, competing can be a very healthy thing, healthy competition, but not when the competition means that you have no regard for the interests of the other person, especially in these settings. Yes, thank you. Thank you, great comments coming through the chat. Okay. So we're going to move into the critical thinking, and we only have a few minutes left. So we're going to try to fly through this really quick. So critical thinking, what is it? What does critical thinking mean? And what it means for me is just thinking about thinking, like really sitting back and thinking about thinking. I always say, I used to tell my son, that half of the people that's in prison right now, and probably a greater percentage than just half that are in prison right now, wouldn't be in prison if they just thought about it. They just pause for a minute and just think about what they're about to do, right? And so it's a way of deciding if a situation or a claim that you have is either true or false, or sometimes it might be true, and sometimes it might be false, or partly true and partly false. So it can be split into kind of two important areas when you talk about critical thinking. It's either logical, like this whole fallacy around the logical fallacies, and or cognitive bias, right? And so when we're talking about cognitive, is when someone makes a bad choice that they think is a good choice. Leaving your kid in the house while sleeping while you run to the grocery store, bad choice. But in their opinion, it's like, hey, they're asleep. I didn't want to disturb their sleep. I got to go to the grocery store, but not really thinking, what if the child wakes up while you're gone? What if someone rings the doorbell and it disturbs your child's sleep, and they go to answer the door and this child is by itself? So that's that cognitive bias. And the other one is the fallacies, a misleading argument that might sound true and may even be based on truth, but isn't fact. Um, or is actually a falsehood. So those are the two kind of components of critical thinking: cognitive bias and the idea of logical fallacies, right? And so when we're talking about critical thinking, I'm always, I want to express how important it is for you to examine the issue, right? And that helps you to analyze it, and that helps you to explore what's going on, to use effective communication, and this is why I'm always doing conflict management and critical thinking together, because if you notice, they're married to each other. Ask questions, inquire about the consequences of whatever this thing is, this action or this thought that you have. What are the consequences? I need more information about this thing. The other thing is using efforts to determine, to help you be stronger in your determination to focus on some of the tasks that's in front of you that might be more challenging. Right? Give you an opportunity to kind of reflect, right? These are some of the additional traits that you have when you're talking about critical thinking, like people who are very reflective, always kind of reviewing their thoughts and processing through their thoughts and some of their experiences that they may have, always applying some of the knowledge that they have so that you can have a better understanding of what's going on around you. Using your knowledge and imagination to actually express new ideas, right? That's part of critical thinking. Adjust some of your actions and strategies to accomplish your task. And then the other thing is collaborating, working with others to achieve better solutions, right? Because every person that you're ever going to know is going to know something that you don't know. So collaborating helps to strengthen the direction of the work that you're trying to do. So that's a little bit of critical thinking. And again, each one of these tasks that we're talking about, each one of these slides that we've been sharing with you, that deserves a whole nother 1 hour session. But I wanted to bring it to you so that you have a good idea of what some of the skills that you might want to tap into as a young high school person or parents help your child to strengthen as they're preparing to go to college. Now, the final slide that I want to share with you is about who you should know, right? I run a parent group, and I promise you, many of our parents that's have first generation kids do not know the function of some of these individuals. Now, there's way more people that work at your campus that will be working at your campus. But it's really important to know who these particular people are and what their overall function is, because you're going to be interfacing with them a whole lot. In addition to your professor, I didn't put that on here because I didn't think that would be the biggest challenge, but here are the people that you should know. You should build some healthy relationships with the financial aid officer. Who is a financial aid officer? And many times they have multiple financial aid officers in their institution, and a lot of them have different expertise. And so really being important for you to know who is the financial aid officer assigned to you. Sometimes you'll find that the financial officer is assigned to you based on your last name. Some of them may be assigned based on your department that you're in. But there are specific financial officers that will be assigned to you. They're responsible for making sure that they connect you as a student to opportunities to fund your college education. And they also help you to figure out how to manage your aid and educate you on what to be expected when you receive your aid, how it's going to be distributed, and what to be expected once you graduate and it's time for you to actually pay that financial aid back if it is a loan. So they will help to address any problems that arise dealing with your financial aid, whether it's scholarships, fellowships, or actual private or federal loans. That's a financial aid officer's responsibility. In terms of the dean actually leads your academic department. So if you're in the School of Education, you have a dean that leads that academic department, who is the supervisor, of the faculty and staff in that department. Now, they may not be the direct supervisor. They may have an associate dean there that will be the direct supervisor, but the dean is the head of that department. Or the lead. So they usually have a department head as well. So there's some other titles that I could share with you in a future session. But the deans are responsible for the recruitment. They're responsible for the appointments. They're responsible for the retention that happens in their school and their departments. They're in terms of their administration, the academic staff, faculty specifically assigned to that school or college. So they're responsible for the success of the college. So if you are struggling in your college with your professor, typically they'll say, okay, go to the department and talk to the department head. Maybe they'll say, talk to the associate dean. And if you can't get through to them, contact the dean. So that's usually the progression that happens when you're having an issue. The provost is typically in a college the supervisors of the deans. So they're over the deans of the colleges on campus. So they collaborate with the university's president, who's the boss of all bosses. And they also set academic priorities for the entire university. And they are also responsible for allocating funds in the different departments in order for them to carry out some of their priorities that the university president has set. So if you're struggling with things on campus from your professor and you didn't went to the department and you didn't talk to the secretary, you didn't talk to the department head, you didn't talk to the associate dean, you made it to the dean, the next step is typically the provost. And then the bursar office is responsible for collecting and analyzing all student charges and fees, like all of the charges and fees that will show up on your bill, your class charges, all of that stuff. If you're struggling with that, you're mad about that, you usually go to the bursars about that. And that includes your tuition, it includes your student unions, and it also includes, if your university offers any type of health support or dental support, you'll find that information through the bursar. So that's who you will go to from there. And again, we can continue having this conversation at a later date to drill down on some other titles that you may want to be aware of. Okay. And so, I know that this is a really quick, session. We kind of ran through some of this stuff. We're going to spend another 15, 20 minutes. And this is the benefit of registering for these sessions because we get to have one-on-one open dialogue. So we have about 52 of you logged in here, which is great. And so I'm going to try to get through as many questions as we can, have some open dialogue and chat. For those of you who are listening in, this is a recording, you won't have access to that open dialogue and communication, but that's okay. You'll have an opportunity to register in the future. Oh, yes. And yes, good question. When you have to be careful with the way you communicate with your professors. And we talked about communication early in advance, right? Our young people have a habit of communicating with adults or in professional settings in an unprofessional manner. And so when you're on campus, most professors have an expectation that you address them based on their credentials. If they're a doctor, whatever, you need to be addressing them as doctor, whatever. Not, hey, Mike, I'm wondering when's my class. I haven't gotten information about the time of my class. They will not respond. I've seen some professors just not even respond to that. And, I always encourage my students that you're not texting. You're not on social media. So use complete sentences, be professional, because if you want a professional response, you want to communicate professionally. So yes, it's okay to send communication to your professors, written communication if you can't get in contact with them. I prefer going to the office and speaking to them, but sometimes it's hard to pin them down because they're so busy. But be careful with the way you craft your emails, and take your time to Google, go onto the website, your university website, and find out who they, get their information. If they have a PhD, EDD, a D, something at the end of their name, then know what that means so that you can address them properly. When you have your first class, you can ask your professors, how would you like us to address you? Mr., Mrs., Doctor, Sir, because that's going to be something that's acceptable to them. Let them tell you how to communicate with them. On the syllabus, it will tell you information about who they are. And so if they're using their titles, then you use those titles as well. So just be careful, about the way you communicate. If you want communication back, you want to be careful with the way you craft your messages to your professor. So we're out of time. Thank you for your messages. For the rest of these questions that are in the chat box, we're gonna just deep dive in a few minutes. Those who have been watching this as a recording, thank you for checking us out. Thank you, participants, for registering. We hope to see you next month. Where Tyrell Hairston Green, our outreach program manager, will be facilitating a workshop about mental health. So please go into embracingarms.com and register for that workshop as well. So have an amazing rest of your day. Don't forget to go out in the community and embrace someone. They're waiting on you, and continue to live your absolute best life.